Hi, my name is Rob Scott from UC Today, and welcome to our August Microsoft Teams news update. So as always, I'm joined by Microsoft Teams expert and co-founder of Empowering.Cloud, Tom Arbuthnot, and together with our panel of experts, we're going to be talking through the most popular Teams headlines from the past few weeks. Welcome, Tom. How's it going?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, it's quieted a little bit down as we just head into August, but news-wise, it's still been really busy. We've had Microsoft end of FY, and we've had their partner conference, their Inspire conference. So even though it's August, still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say this, don't we, around August, that always is going to go a little bit quiet, but you know what, Inspire, did give us what we were looking for, right? Which is plenty of news.
Some new Teams feature announcements out of the partner conference was interesting, and yeah, just general phone and Copilot, lots of news there as well. So a lot to talk about.
Good stuff. Well, we've got a great panel of guests on today as well. So welcome everybody. Let's first of all just cover off Microsoft's latest Q4 results. Tom, why is that so significant?
Yeah, so this is the end of their financial year of 2023, so just announced results. So Microsoft often drip numbers into those results, and obviously they're very, very vetted numbers because they're going out as financial results, so you can generally kind of rely on them. And it's interesting to see what they announce, because they don't announce, obviously, because they want to kind of keep the markets interested. They don't announce exactly the same numbers or exactly the same format every year, so you have to see what they're announcing and what they care about. But the headline number, which we should dive into, is we got a new Microsoft Teams Phone active seats, so not licensed active, and that's 17 million PSTN users. So a jump from the last official announcement we had was 12 million, which is up 45% year over year, and I think it's about 5 million in the last year. We also heard some announcements around Teams Premium, their upsell per user license. That's up to 600,000 users since its launch in February. And then we got some kind of announcements that we've heard before. 70% of the Fortune 500 using Teams Rooms, and 1,900 apps in the Teams App Store. Office 365 commercial seats grew 11% year over year, so still significant growth there. But the big one, obviously, was that new public Teams Phone active seat number license.
You wouldn't be too disappointed with those results, would you, if you were in the Microsoft Teams team at Microsoft? Kevin, what do you think, being our resident analyst, what do you think to these numbers? What does it mean?
Yeah, so obviously, we have onward and upward in terms of the Teams Phone seats. It's interesting. I think that there's two factors. You've got, in some ways, this, the slowing of PSTN calling. That used to be the gold standard, and now, certainly meetings, scheduled meetings, as opposed to just kind of ad hoc calls. Seem to be where, a lot of knowledge workers spend a lot of time. So I think, we continue to see that growth. I think, we're going to talk a little bit later about the shared device license and, the opening up in India. I think that those are both going to drive kind of that monthly active user number increasingly high. Certainly Teams, at least, on the last kind of summary, Teams for a unified communication as a service platform had the most telephony seats. But I think, to put that in context, there's still hundreds of thousands of on-prem seats. So definitely onward and upward, but huge growth potential for organizations that are looking to move PSTN calling to the cloud.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there, Kevin. That a lot of those 17 million, they're organisations that might not intend to activate everybody for Teams Phone, because I see a lot of enterprises now right-sizing their phone investment. So actually, it's probably representative of more seats than you would think, because the organisation might say, I'm only going to have 50% of my users even need a phone license. And as you say, shared calling, which we'll talk about later, might change that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very interesting trend that we're seeing here, isn't it? And I wonder how much this velocity has kind of been fueled by, Microsoft's Operator Connect Accelerator and programs and that kind of thing that have all really fired up in the past kind of year, haven't they? So, how much of that growth do you think is kind of calling outside of Microsoft's actual platform?
So most of it is calling plans outside of Microsoft. Like direct routing is still the dominant calling kind of modality or platform. Operator Connect is definitely growing as well, but it's mostly external carrier. I think a big part of it is just enterprises just take a long while to get moving. So a lot of those enterprises that run Teams are doing Teams Phone, but they're just going site by site, PBX by PBX, country by country. So I know Microsoft are keen to push people to go faster, obviously, to get those activations, but a lot of them that are already licensed are just kind of plodding along. So we'll keep seeing that number tipping up as projects go, I think.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on to Microsoft Inspire, Tom, because this is, this was, or it was Microsoft's big partner-focused event. Were you expecting so many kind of, innovations and updates coming through at this event?
Yeah, it's interesting because some years at Inspire we do get feature announcements, and some years we get less, and it's more focused on the sales and the partner kind of march. So it's always a mixed bag as to whether we get genuine feature announcements. But this time we did get some genuine feature announcements. The big topic, obviously, across the whole of that show was Copilot. Copilot is massively Microsoft's favorite thing. They're on the hype train at the moment. Obviously, I don't know if you saw the results, but the financial markets reacted very strongly around the Inspire timeframe. So that was the big thing. We'll talk about how that plays into Teams Phone and Teams Chat in a minute. But first of all, we got the all-up kind of Copilot for Microsoft 365 pricing. So Microsoft are looking to charge $30 per user per month to add Copilot to M365. So that'll be across Teams, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, etc. Interesting reactions to that. Some people thinking it's potentially expensive. I mean, if you compare it to, say, the current top tier SKU being about $50 for Microsoft, it's certainly a big addition, just mathematically. But on the other hand, some people are comparing it to the potential productivity saving and time saving. And if you can equate it to knowledge worker salaries, and you say I could save an hour a week just having Outlook sort my email out and create a PowerPoint presentation, then it ROIs really quickly. So, but the markets reacted very strongly that Microsoft seemed to be kind of, particularly with this Copilot brand, they've kind of got the march on the AI conversation in the markets about who's going to have the innovation and how are they going to productize it into something useful for people that they can sell and make money out of.
Really interesting. Josh, what do you think about the price? You look like you've got something to say on this one.
Yeah, there was some whiplash on the pricing for a lot of people, right? There was a lot of, whoa, I'm sorry, what'd you say? How much was that again? And so and it's an interesting one, right? There's a lot of justification that goes into, well, let's compare it to the other products on the market that do similar things, and that those products aren't taking in a whole ecosystem of products. And so when they break down the value of the price, and there's a lot of community support for the price too, it tends to make more sense. And I think a lot of companies are not going to push this out to the masses. They're going to push it out to the specific people who are going to benefit from the feature sets. But yeah, my take on it was that I did still feel it was a bit higher than what I would have thought it should have been. Right? It's probably competitive. I think that it's an awesome opportunity to increase wider ecosystem adoption for Microsoft across a great number of products. And I think if the barrier were a bit lower on that, it would just kind of help explode usage and adoption of the wider platform. But that's my humble opinion on kind of where I thought they should have come in with that. There does seem to be a very healthy amount of support for that price range, and the target user group that will hopefully and potentially end up adopting it. So
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And there's 600 users on the early access program, and they've all paid to get into that program. So they're like just to get to the beta stuff. So clearly that price point doesn't seem to be putting off at least the early adopter orgs. But I agree with you completely. It's definitely not a no-brainer territory. It's definitely not a give it to everyone territory. Obviously, at enterprise scale, there's always a negotiation, right? So that's the sticker price. Like big orgs with tens of thousands of seats will be having a chat about how they make it make sense. But I mean, Microsoft want to, like, they're a commercial company. They want to monetize this. It's expensive to do, and they've committed 10 billion to OpenAI, but that's not charity. That's money they want to see back. So they're seeing the opportunity here to monetize for sure.
Tom, I think you touched on this point. for a lot of us who haven't had a chance to personally, we're not in that preview, and so we haven't been able we understand kind of theoretically capabilities. We've seen demo that side, but if truly, the impact of these tools is, I can jump into Excel and have it, create a pivot table and a bunch of analysis for me that I can reporting and charts that I couldn't do otherwise, and lay out my PowerPoint. This could pay for itself in an hour for a lot of people, and so I think that's where the pricing could feel high, but as soon as people get a chance, if this really lives up to its potential and expectations, it could ROI super quick for most organizations.
Yeah, yeah. So if it's half as good as the marketing makes out, and you do the pure calculation on productivity, one of the challenges with that rationale is that works on a user-to-user basis, but the accounts team that signs off the extra million, a quarter for licensing, doesn't do maths like that. They're just like, well, we didn't have it before, and do we need it now? But I mean, a lot of organizations, I mean, not just in Copilot, but like are talking about AI now, and they're kind of in a combination of scared about the regulatory and compliance and risk, and worried they'll be left behind if they don't get on the bandwagon and their competitors do, and they're that much more fast, reactive, productive. So it's a bit of a kind of, if you're a CTO at a big org, you've got to at least have a conversation about this, because you can't be seen to be ignoring the fact that it's going to change a lot in the next few years.
Well, and I think one thing to keep in mind too is the compute power that's required to deliver this, right? So I know even with like Teams Premium, the meeting recap wasn't available in, most geographies because they didn't have the compute power in specific data centers. So I think, on the financial call, the analysts were asking, because I think, Microsoft's making these billions of dollars of investment, and they haven't really been clear on when this is going to be generally available. So I think the financial analysts are saying, hey, this is great, but when are you going to start being able to get the return? I still think that Microsoft has, big investments that are required to scale out the compute power in the data centers. So,
and everybody's after those NVIDIA GPUs, aren't they, as well? It's not just them, it's all the...
They said that they're going to build their own silicon to try to drive down price, but that's a long-term play. But the other thing I think to keep in mind is it's almost like Microsoft now has an unfair competitive advantage in a very positive way, which is, you just can't go and do a query and call an API with ChatGPT from any other platform, because what makes the results so significant and impactful is you do grounding, which means, if I say, hey, what did Tom do yesterday on the project? It knows what Tom I'm talking about, because, if I'm a Microsoft shop, it has access to all my meetings, all my contacts, all my documents, and in a secure way. And so, the AI in Copilot combined with all my business intellectual property that I've already put in, Microsoft through my emails, meetings, etc. I think that makes the AI that Microsoft delivers, it's going to have better results than, kind of people just calling an API.
And Microsoft are very conscious of that right now, aren't they? The security piece. We've seen that with Bing Chat Enterprise recently. Bing's been removed temporarily from ChatGPT's platform, or OpenAI's ChatGPT platform due to some security concerns. So there's a lot to play out by the sounds of things. What do you think, Josh?
No, I mean, yeah, and there was another interesting announcement from Inspire around Bing Chat Enterprise and that being provided, with some of the licensing. So that was another big one. But there's a lot going on there. What I was gonna chime in there a moment ago was just on the whole Copilot, to the point Kevin was making. When you say Copilot, I've heard a lot of people say, well, which Copilot are you talking about? Because it's spread across so many different products within the platform. And that's part of what the differentiator is that its reach goes so far throughout an organization's beyond where they probably even know they have licensing at this stage. because a lot of people are licensed for things that they don't use and they don't realize they can. I think this is going to help unlock a lot of that usage for those organizations and a lot of that adoption that Microsoft wants to see for things that are licensed or might be licensed but otherwise aren't touched. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, even if you take away the like it doing stuff for you, like generating a PowerPoint or generating a Word doc, which I think, if you've used ChatGPT today, it gets you maybe 60, 70% of the way there. It's not doing the work for you, but it's definitely helping a lot. But if you just think of it as a training tool for like, a lot of us are knowledge workers, but don't really know, to Ryan's point, how to drive Excel, how to drive PowerPoint properly, how to use Word properly. If you can get to the point where you can say to Word in English, I want a table of contents in this format, and it goes bang, like that's going to help so many people that just can't drive I say the basics, I can't do a lot of these things, like drive the Office apps to full effect. So just that is already a productivity boom before you even get into please summarize my emails or do clever things like that.
Indeed. Well, let's double click on Copilot for Teams. There was a Teams phone update, Tom.
Yeah, so we got two Copilot announcements specific for Teams. So again, you will need this add-on license of Copilot to activate these in Teams. So one is Copilot for Teams Phone, the other one is Copilot for Teams Chat. Teams Phone is probably the most interesting one. So for both Teams Phone, i.e. PSTN calls, and Teams VoIP calls, so i.e. internal peer-to-peer calling or federated calling, you'll be able to activate Copilot for those scenarios too. So even if a customer's calling in on PSTN, you can press the Copilot button and do all the Copilot type things of asking for a summary, getting sentiment, asking for the key points made on the call, which is a really interesting, compelling reason to jump to Teams Phone to the cloud. Like there's a new functionality. Previous to that, we've been saying, wouldn't it be nice to put your phone in the cloud because it's one application, it's easier, simpler, faster, cheaper. But now this is like brand new functionality for a PSTN scenario, which I don't think we've seen before. And then the other one was a bit more, I think probably a more day-to-day scenario that a lot of us hit, which is you get added to a chat and you don't have any context to that chat. You can ask Copilot to say, hey, summarize the chat, what's been said so far, are there any actions on me, who's got which actions. So what happens a lot in the Teams world is a project will start as a chat and you add people, oh, we need marketing on this, oh, we need salesperson on this, oh, Jack's dealt with this once. So they get added to a big long running thread, and there's probably 6 really important points in 1,000 messages, and Copilot can kind of drag some of that out for you.
And is this available today?
No, as Ryan said, this is the funniest thing: is the stock price really bumped. Like everybody's hyped. The whole Inspire conference was partners get ready to sell this stuff, but there's still no GA date. So we've got the next big show for Microsoft in November, the Ignite show, which is the customer-facing show. So you've got to imagine there'll be some announcements around then. But it's interesting to see Microsoft focus so heavily on this for partners at their July show, because they're getting them ready to do the prep work and sell work. So you've got to think it's going to be at least this calendar so that we get something for the partners to move on. But no public announcements around dates, and even externally, all the people that are on the early access program have been sworn to secrecy in terms of sharing stuff. So there's very limited information outside of Microsoft at the moment.
I think that they, there's probably a couple reasons for the no GA date. And I think part of that is, taking our time, building the product right, buttoning up everything that needs to be buttoned up, and just making sure we come to market with exactly what we want to come to market with. But I kind of wonder if the other half of dragging it out without a date has to do with some of the regulatory stuff that's trying to work its way through in different geographies, because there's still a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of worry, concern about data. And I think that because of how fast all this, not just at Microsoft, AI in general, how fast it's hit the market, everything else is still trying to catch up from a legal, regulatory standpoint. I kind of wonder if Microsoft is waiting to see a few key things work their way through the systems before they hit the button on that GA date.
Not only that, but also their readiness towards their data centers as well, for the services to work seamlessly in all different geographies. While I was speaking with the Microsoft rep, they mentioned that every week there are two data centers that are getting updated for serving this Copilot and AI capabilities as well.
There is also, and they emphasize this, there is also work that organizations need to do because, there's the potential for oversharing of information, right? So it's not creating access to information that users shouldn't, don't already have access to. But when you do a query and when Copilot goes out, it is going to grab all the documents that have been shared with you. And so there are some tools that Microsoft's made available to identify where maybe somebody has shared it with groups that they didn't intend to. So it's not creating more security or compliance holes. It's just that because Copilot is so good at finding things, it's going to find everything and maybe, things that you weren't supposed to, somebody overshares, right? Because not everybody understands. And I'm going to raise my hand sometimes too with OneDrive where you try to share something and maybe you end up sharing it a little more broadly than you intended. So there is some pre-work that I think that they emphasize that, partners can work with organizations, until I think it's going to be generally available sometime, into 2024. So it's not this year.
And that's the major reason why they also brought up the AI partner program as well, specifically concentrated towards Copilot, Bing Chat Enterprise, and emphasizing more of the partner to start readiness with their customer bases as well.
Yeah, definitely. That was the big push, wasn't it? Get your customers ready, make sure the governance, compliance conversations. Also, Microsoft know it takes enterprises a long while, to Josh's point, to get their head around this kind of change. So having the partners warm up the customers so they're ready to buy when it's available is a motion for Microsoft. On the other hand, the partners have got to make money, and like there's only so much preparation you can do. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the partners equip themselves to do big prep projects, and how the customers react to that as well.
They got to get their strategies together about how they convince the accounting teams of their customers to swallow the $30 per user.
And to add to it, you had Teams Premium earlier, and now you have to add on the Copilot sale as well. One interesting news that was announced in the Inspire was Teams Premium and Copilot is a major focus for this year for the sales internally within Microsoft as well. So that was one of the interesting thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big focus on all the upsells, isn't it? So Teams Premium, Copilot, Rooms, and Phone in the Teams world. And anything that's a upsell, upping the ARPU is kind of a big focus for Microsoft.
Well, and what do you think about like the Teams Premium with the intelligent meeting recap? I mean, that licensing to me doesn't make sense. You got all the other recap, even the Teams Phone recap that you mentioned. Like I don't know, what does this group think? Like to me it seems like they're going to have to rationalize some of that licensing because you got one meeting recap in Teams Premium and a lot of other summary capabilities in the $30 per user per month that you get with Copilot. What does this group think about that?
Like it doesn't. If you look externally, like I want to buy the AI cleverness, the fact you have to buy two SKUs is really weird. I can see a use case for intelligent recap without Copilot, so I can kind of see it that way around. But yeah, the fact you have to buy your M365 SKUs, you have to be on M365, not O365. Then you want all the AI goodness, you have to buy Teams Premium at $10. Then you have to buy Copilot at $30 as well. And if you skip the Teams Premium, you don't get your meetings recapped in AI, even though you paid for Copilot. The line Microsoft are making or trying to make is intelligent meeting recap is automated. You can't interact with it. It generates for you. That's premium. The second you interact, you ask questions about the content, you want to generate a PowerPoint from the meeting summary, that's when it's Copilot. So they're trying to make that distinction, but I'm kind of with you, Kevin. It's a bit weird that the AI line is blurry. And obviously internally to Microsoft, the Teams team see the revenue for Teams Premium because it's a team SKU, whereas Copilot will get spread across all the different product groups and stuff like that. So there's probably some, kind of rev rec scenario where it helps teams to be recognized as pushing premium as well.
I think that that will be a kind of rub point for a lot of customers that'll get back to Microsoft, and I kind of it'll be interesting to see if they massage or offer different variations of the licensing to kind of include that perceived overlap, right? I think that's I think they have time to sort some of that out, and I probably will probably hear more on that. But it is I've heard that a few times about, well, I don't get it. When for what? Why? There's some clarification that really needs to hit the market on that.
But with Teams Premium being generally available across all the market, adoption of that and sell of the Teams Premium would be much more quicker compared to Copilot, because we don't know the exact date when it would be generally available. And with Microsoft focus on the AI, Premium would have an overhead advantage over the other things as well in the meantime.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, it wouldn't be the first time the product team at Microsoft did a U-turn on a brand name or a SKU or something like that, would it? But lots to play out here. So let's jump on to a couple more updates from the last few weeks. Shared calling was another one mentioned, Tom.
Yeah, I think this is probably the biggest announcement actually, even though all the Copilot stuff is obviously capturing everybody's attention. So shared calling is the ability for Microsoft Teams Phone to support one DDI and critically one calling plan across multiple users. So in the old PBX world, it wouldn't be that unusual for some customers to say, not every user needs a DDI, so we'll have a reception number and then we'll give you an internal extension. And if you make calls out, it'll present the reception number. And if people want to call you back, they'll call reception and get passed through to you. So then I don't have to pay as an organization for a DDI per user, which in some markets, like UK, US is $1.50, couple of dollars. But in some markets, DDIs are extremely expensive. So things like some of the Asian countries, you can get up to like $500 a DDI potentially. So why this is interesting is this unlocks a whole bunch of customer scenarios where they were like, well, we would do Teams Phone, we're already licensed, we've got E5, but we don't want to pay for those DDIs, so we're not going to bother. To now, oh, we can share either a calling plan or direct routing or operator connect over a bunch of users, one DDI. They get the convenience of having Teams Phone, but we don't have to pay for a per user uplift. That's quite interesting. I think that, to Kevin's point at the start of the session, that might bump those Teams Phone activation numbers significantly.
To a certain extent, this would also be impacting the service providers or the telcos, because one DDI for 1,000 users, the revenue for them would be impacted, because for them, monthly recurring cost comes in majorly from the DDIs and the usage, so it would impact them. But yes, on the number side, the telephony number side, Microsoft would definitely get a larger number of PSTN phone number users enabled, because currently those users are only using Teams for Teams to Teams or a VoIP calling. That number would go up significantly if you are having up the shared calling services altogether.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point on the carriers. Like, this is not good for the carriers because they potentially make a lot of money on the DDIs, because we all know PSG and concurrency is going lower. Now, obviously, you could counter that a bunch of customers already run like this today. They run on a channel and single DDI model. But does this encourage more customers to go that way? It doesn't matter to Microsoft because it's not their revenue that's being hit, really. It's the carriers' revenue.
This seems to unlock a lot of SMB opportunity as well, for the kind of low end of the market that has never used DIDs, broadly and from a cost perspective. So yeah, I think a little, small shop, that kind of thing. So I think there's a big sea of opportunity this unlocks.
Yep. With this, although the calling plan never had the cost for DDIs, but Operator Connect and Direct Routing would be the partners or the telcos where they'll get a significant hit on the numbers if we use the same one single DID.
Yeah, and the way Microsoft are doing it, they're sharing a calling plan over all of them, but it's only the pay-as-you-go model. So you have to do pay-as-you-go, and their pay-as-you-go rates are not fantastic compared to the market. So, I mean, over 1,000 users, it probably evens out potentially. But there will be an opportunity for direct routing and operator connect providers to come in and provide on the old school channel model and say you've got 1,000 users, we're going to go for 10% concurrency, 100 channels plus your DDI is this much potentially.
In that SMB space, this seems to hurt carrier even more. Right? I think at that point I can come in, pay Microsoft for one calling plan or two calling plans for my 25 users, and I don't really need anybody else, and it's a pretty simple story at that point.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have a look back in sort of 6-12 months and see how it's impacted the market actually.
Yeah, that is really interesting, and certainly want to get a carrier's opinion on that one at some stage. But anyway, let's move on. Teams Phone in India, Tom. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, this is a good one. Obviously, India, huge market. Lots of organisations that I work with actually have big divisions or sub orgs in India. India is a bit of a pain from a telco regulatory point of view. It has kind of like in the UK, it'd be all counties, like different areas that have to break out locally. You have to have local infrastructure. So we could do direct routing in India. You'd put some kit down, you connect to the local telco. But soon, no date yet, Microsoft are going to work with India partners. So the launch partners are going to be Airtel, Tata Communications, and Tata Telebusiness Services to sell cloud telephony, so Operator Connect in India to Indian users, and it'll all be compliant and legal. So the way that'll work is the Indian carriers, those three I mentioned and others potentially, will sell some kind of SKU to the customer, so that the service is coming from that carrier, and that ticks all the legal regulatory. So it'll be a big unlock for companies that want to do true cloud telephony in India.
So with India an announcement, we did speak with the program team as well on the Indian announcement, and they mentioned that the readiness is still happening with all these telcos. India would be a big market, not only from the enterprise perspective, but also from the number of user base that they have currently in India. The demand is really high. They have been significant request. And this itself can scale up the big number of user base on the Teams phone enablement as well, because India requests have been predominantly, to certain extent, some of the requests of 5 to 10% have already been fulfilled with direct routing as a service. Three partners that were announced: Airtel, Tata Communications, and TCL, Tata Communications Limited. So I spoke with both of the Tata Group as well, and like one would be focusing on the enterprise, and the other one would be focusing majorly on the SMB market within India as well.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a huge market, huge potential.
Good stuff. Let's talk about a product that was also announced at the event, which was Maxhub, Tom.
Yeah, Maxhub are the latest OEM. So we keep hearing from Microsoft like there's, we don't need more OEMs doing Teams Rooms, but then we get more OEMs doing Teams Rooms. So I think this is the 14th or maybe even 15th OEM offering Teams Room devices. What's different here is they're really hitting an aggressive price point on an uplift from BYOD. So if you already got your camera and mic in your room, you're doing bring your own device where you plug in a laptop, they'll be offering kits where you can plug in your those existing devices with an MTR system, MTRW, and off you go. And they're also offering some Android-based MTR as well. So yeah, I think they're going for the kind of aggressive price point of the market.
This one is interesting. I think there's this broader trend and quite a bit of potential white space where organizations have not been able to deploy Teams Rooms to some of the smallest of spaces, the huddle rooms and the small rooms, and they've done more BYOD in those scenarios based on both hardware costs and the labor and integration costs attached to Teams Rooms. And so as the physical installation is getting simpler, I think the announcement from Maxhub on the Windows side, we have devices like A10 on the Yealink side, and we've got increasing kind of group of entry level products that have been introduced. We saw Logitech introduce Huddle, but I think all of this is moving to a place that organizations in those smaller spaces are going to have pretty simple options to from a physical install, where they may end up doing some DIY or having they're a low voltage vendor or somebody that's not necessarily the traditional integration play, you'll help deploy what is a more full-featured system that has analytics and capabilities and go beyond BYOD, at costs, let's say, well south of $1,500 US, price points on the hardware side, hopefully getting south of even $1,000. So it's very interesting, and Maxhub comes with this both bolt on to BYOD capability along with some peripherals of their own. So if you don't have something in there today that you could connect like a puck or a bar, then they have bars and a bar solution. They also have a puck and webcam solution. But I think this is the beginning of a sea of low cost MTR that will help from an adoption perspective on the cost side.
Really interesting. And just to end, not just to end the Inspire talk and kind of move on to, and we're going to talk about the antitrust inquiry into Microsoft Teams in a few moments. Tom, there was one update that you've left out today, and I know this was particularly close to your heart, and that's the Maybelline new app for Microsoft Teams. Now, come on, tell me more about that one.
Like a makeup feature, like filter for Teams, basically. So the kind of Snapchat type filters. It's interesting. I tweeted on this, and there's two things here, and they're separate conversations. I kind of want to make sure they're separate as well. So they didn't do a very good job on Twitter. I'm not entirely sure about like face filters for people in general in the whole world. Like I feel like they have some kind of reality distorting. So there's that conversation, which is interesting. But people want to do them, they want to do them. That's cool. But there's also the fact that this is branded Maybelline, which obviously is a commercial organization. And I find it increasingly weird with an enterprise product that you have things like the Oreo, Favicon and Maybelline filters. Like if you're a competitor to Maybelline, do you not roll out that feature? If it was coming from Maybelline and they built it third party and they were promoting it as a fun thing to do, that's cool. But it's kind of, there's this weird relationship building where Microsoft increasingly branding things. And I don't think it's particularly nefarious. I think Microsoft just want Teams to be hip and cool and people like those fun features. But it kind of rubs me up the wrong way when I see like co-branded features, which are kind of semi-sponsored, semi-not. Where's the money going for that kind of thing? Is interesting.
From a hybrid perspective, I'm so sorry. I was just saying, from a hybrid perspective, I think some of that functionality really is powerful. I guess this idea on the days that I don't have to come into the office, if don't have to put makeup on or do, if somebody could put, do some basics. I think it really can make life a little bit easier for folks that we want video on. And in the days that they're not in the office, I think as much as it can feel kind of silly, I think some of this actually has a real impact on the hybrid side.
Yeah, and there was a lot of feedback along those terms, Ryan, that was like this helped a lot of people feel more camera ready, and I guess that's a positive thing. I kind of, you look at the way some of the like the TikTok beauty filters work and stuff, and it's almost like a completely different person at that point. I don't know where the line is on this as to where it's acceptable or not, and I guess it's a whole societal issue.
Well, it's the other thing is you get an eye on as someone from the outside. Hey, I've been waiting on this business critical parity feature to be released forever, and you're telling me you just put all that dev work into fake makeup? It's like I have a bit of a problem with that from a dev side. But others kind of look at that like, where are your priorities exactly here? But I think there is a wider conversation, though. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds about where the line is. Where do we stop taking more and more pieces of what make us human and just let it be whatever we want it to be? Where is the line between keeping that conversation natural and real and feeling natural to where you just have no idea if you're talking with a person or a dog anymore, but it's going in some interesting directions. Some of which I'm not a personal fan of, but I get the benefit for a lot of people that are advocates for it. So I think there's a line that collectively as people we'll have to kind of decide, look, where does it make sense for us to communicate in the business world, and where does it start to become too blurry of lines? Right.
Welcome to the Matrix, Josh. Final news item for today. We said we'd talk about the EU antitrust inquiry into Microsoft Teams bundling, Tom, and this goes way back, doesn't it? Since Slack put that advert in the newspaper that time, and like a Jack Russell, it's not going away for Microsoft, is it?
Yeah, so I think we reported on this at the time. So obviously, when Teams first launched, Slack did that whole, welcome to the new ways of working, good luck, and very quickly Teams did quite well, and then Slack were laughing a lot less. Slack, and I don't think that this is ungrounded. Slack complained to the EU that it's anti-competitive that Microsoft have such a lock on the Office suite to bundle in unified communications. That suite is an unfair advantage. And this harks back to the kind of browser bundling of old. So Microsoft got big fines and got told off for bundling their browser in Windows, which was considered anti-competitive because they obviously own the desktop and therefore they bundled the browser. They produced a different version of Windows which had what's called a browser ballot, so you could choose which browser you preferred, and they let that go accidentally for a while and they got fined again. Funny enough, in the end, the browser thing, like Google just built a better browser and everybody used Chrome, and Internet Explorer lost market share regardless of that advantage, which is quite interesting. But the same thing's happening again here, where Slack and others have complained to the EU that it's anti-competitive to have Teams bundled so tightly with Office. Microsoft and the EU were talking. There was nothing official announced from either party, but there were various reports of how can we make this, do we create a SKU without Teams in? Do we charge an extra couple of dollars for Teams? They couldn't make an agreement, and now there's an official antitrust investigation. These things move super, super slowly, so the EU will look into it and decide if it's unfair that Microsoft bundled Teams with Office, and you might potentially see some kind of alternate SKU where you're like, I buy M365 minus Teams and I have to pay extra for Teams in Europe, and that gives the opportunity for another partner to say we can do the same thing for a similar price. I think it's a little bit late now. We're at 300 million MAU, so like stopping that momentum is going to be tough, but net I think it's good we have big commissions like the EU looking at this stuff to make sure the market's competitive. We need choices, we need competition to keep everybody at their A game.
Good stuff. Okay, well, we've covered loads of ground there today, gents. But finally, I think we should just plug a couple of up-and-coming events. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, we've got a couple of good things coming up. It's quieter in August, but September, we've got Jamie Stark coming on the Teams Fireside Chats. That's our monthly get-together where we have a guest and we answer Teams questions. Jamie has been in this space as long as most of us on this call, so he used to actually look after the Microsoft MVPs for OCS and Lync way back in the day, but now he's a principal program manager and he's focused on the admin elements of Teams Phone for Admin Center, so quite a deep area there of getting into how the Teams Admin Center phone admin functionalities work, which should be fun. And also then later in September, we've got Michelle Boehm, who's a Teams what's his title now? Technical specialist, essentially, and he's coming over from the Netherlands to speak at the Microsoft UC User Group London, and we're having it at the Cisco offices in London. So there's again two massive worlds coming together where we're actually going to have the Microsoft User Group event at Cisco. They're going to show some of their kit, and we're going to go through the Microsoft Teams devices kind of vision roadmap as well.
Cool. And as we saw at the UC Awards this just a couple of weeks ago, Cisco really took it home when it comes to hardware.
They're really pushing. They're really serious about getting some share in the Microsoft Teams room space. Like, they're spending a lot of time in the community. They're looking at all the options. They're adding features. So yeah, there's some hot competition in that space for sure.
Good stuff. And last but not least, we do have UCX Europe. It will be at the London XL in London on the 4th and 5th of October. Tom, will you be there?
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm looking forward to that one, actually. That's the big one for us in London and Europe. I'm doing a customer panel on the first day and a session with Microsoft on Teams roadmap and what's coming. So a 2-day event, really, really worthwhile. Everybody in the industry is there, and it's a good one for customers to get in on the latest of what's going on around kind of UC and collab.
Yeah, fantastic. Good stuff. Well, that's it from us. If you're new to UC Today, subscribe. And if you're not, then do give us a like or a comment or a share. It's always appreciated. And if you're a Microsoft Teams fan and want to be part of the conversation, you can always connect with Tom, myself, and our guest speakers on LinkedIn and Twitter, or should I now call it X. Thanks to Tom. Thanks to our guest speakers. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And we'll be back again next month. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.